Woo! So, listen and explain the accomplishments, fine works of art, created by Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo that we discussed in class on Friday. So, I think for your guys' class, we got to Michelangelo. I didn't get to really show you too much about his works, or did I? I show you the Sistine Chapel ceiling. I don't think I did. Okay. So, I'll show you that. We'll talk over a little bit, and then I just give you a little bit of color. There you go. Can't see right there. Okay, sure.
So doing this.
I thought we were at the dark.
Yes.
We are.
Yeah, I'll give you actually. I'll just sit back.
Why?
Don't ring her. All right, so we finished Friday talking about Davinci, especially like I said, Michelangelo kind of cut off because of the time with the tailgate and the pep rally. So let's start off with Davinci. What do we know about? What do we know? What do we have? Paul, go ahead.
As an artist, yeah, his most famous includes Raphael, and he also drew a man, which is the pet anatomy.
Yeah, good job. So the Vitruvian Man, right? I didn't mention that. I didn't have that on the presentation, but I'm sure you guys seen that image before. The man kind of sprawled out. Doesn't have any clothes on. So that's why I didn't put it on there. In case, you don't want to see that type of stuff. But anyway, he was fascinated by the anatomy of the body. Okay, obviously, it's fine works of art detailing about the realism of the time period. And again, he's known as the Renaissance man. Okay, and real quick, the Renaissance man. What are some qualities of the Renaissance man? Since Da Vinci is the Renaissance man, he's depicted as this through this time period. What are some qualities of this Renaissance man? Paul, go ahead.
Charming, witty, and well-educated, provides skill in swordplay, wrestling, horseback,
Good.
dancing.
Oh yeah, keep going. Sorry.
Dancing, singing, with music like poetry, and above all, selfish life. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, good job. So we talked about these qualities before, and what were those qualities displayed at? What was that work that really detailed about the qualities of a Renaissance man? Go ahead, Connor. What was that? It's not the prince. Chris? The courtier. Yeah, good job. Good job. All right, so we also talked a little bit about Mona Lisa, right? Is she smiling? Is she frowning? And how that's a staple of Western civilization. Yeah, that artwork really depicts, and everybody kind of knows that piece and sees, obviously, the essence of it, and really minor details in that painting. And yeah, a lot of people are trying to understand a little bit more in detail and really break down the perspectives, looking, I would say, almost too far into the detail of the Mona Lisa. Yeah, there's many movies based off of Da Vinci. I'm sure you guys heard of Da Vinci's Code before. No? Oh, really? Oh, okay. It's just about like always hiding different types of secrets within his paintings and detailing about maybe some of these hidden passageways all throughout Italy, which is kind of detailing out the national treasure. I'm sure you guys heard of national treasure before. Very similar concept, but breaking down even more of this hidden, this subliminal messages. Again, a lot of people I think just read too far into it. It's just really what we know as that staple of Western civilization in society. So. Good. And we talked a little bit about his engineering. What was he fascinated with? What was he fascinated? Austin, go ahead. Flight. Yeah, good job. So I showed you an example of one of his flying machines. Okay, there's more of them online. I'm sure you can find them. A lot of them resembling bat wings. Obviously not realistic. Probably not going to happen. But in any case, he was fascinated by flight. And this first emergence of these creating and these emergence of these arts depicting flight really started with Da Vinci. Those are really the first known methods of trying to understand flight and why. All right, good. So again, one thing to remember about Da Vinci, which you'll see on the test, he is known as a Renaissance man. All right, Michelangelo. There's some famous works by Michelangelo. Who was he? What was he famous for here? Back, go ahead.
He painted the Sistine Chapel.
Yeah, good job. So the ceiling of Sistine Chapel. The Pope came to him and said, hey, I want to see some sort of beautiful artistic ability work here in the chapel, specifically on the ceiling. So when people come in, they're wowed. They're just kind of blown away by the artwork, by the beauty of these images displayed on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. So again, what were all the paintings about? Revolving around. If the Pope's telling them to draw, yeah, religion. Yeah, good job. So depicting many stories within the Bible. And I'll show you a picture here, an image of the Sistine Chapel. One of the most famous images that he painted is God and Adam touching fingers, close to touching fingers. And again, a lot of people kind of read into it and see exactly what this is meaning, what this is referencing, and depicting the spirit divine and here on earth. Okay, and obviously making that clear separation, but it's very close. It needs to be some sort of connection. Or people say it's drifting away. Right? During the Renaissance period, we see an emergence of humanism and how that separation is becoming a little bit more clear here on earth. Well, again, it's just how you view it, how you depict it. What else? What else? So I told you a little bit too about Michelangelo here with the Sistine Chapel. He was really the first person to ever talk back to a pope. The Pope wanted to see the Sistine Chapel's work and the art on the ceiling before it was completed. And Michelangelo said, nope, as an artist, you don't show your work until it's completely finished. And kind of told the Pope to beat it, get out of here, no one's around yet. So I think that's interesting. Another thing is that he kind of had some sort of rivalry with Raphael. Raphael actually broke into the Sistine Chapel as he was still working on it and observed and saw the ceiling. I thought that was interesting. Raphael took it to heart. It's like, oh, the Pope didn't come to me to paint this. Unbelievable. So I thought that's unique. I thought that was interesting. All right, what else about Michelangelo? What other works of art? What other works of art do we talk about? Or didn't I show you this slide? I thought I showed you this slide. Why? Go ahead. Yeah, good job. Yeah, the sculpture of David. Good. So again, a lot of religion, Christianity being embraced, being depicted in their artwork. Yeah, I talked a little bit too about, and the video expressed a little bit ago, about a week ago with the Medici family. So they had a huge influence on Michelangelo's upbringing, even living with the Medici family. And Michelangelo actually helped create the tomb for the Medici family. And I thought that was interesting, sculpting a lot of these, obviously, images, these essence of the human body and depicting night and day, dusk and dawn on their graves, on their tombs inside of that building in Italy, which I thought was interesting. So again, Michelangelo really impacted by the Medici family. Okay, is there any questions here on Michelangelo, on Davinci? Good? Okay, all right. So here are the terms. Like I said, I'd like to finish up these Renaissance artists today. We'll see. Hopefully we can get through them all. I think we stopped at her. I got William Shakespeare, Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet. I'm sure you guys know that. I mean, I tile size. I don't know. There you go. All right, Shakespeare. I'm sure you heard of him before. What do we know about William Shakespeare? So it's later on in the Renaissance, towards the end, really. But where did he have strong influence? What country? Paul, go ahead.
English. He was very fluent. I regarded as very
Yeah, good job, good job. So from England, obviously, we can see the Renaissance doing what? It's not just staying in Italy; it's emerging up right into Europe, moving all the way up to England. And William Shakespeare is noted famed by his poetry, by his playwrights, his books that he wrote, and just the amazing ideas and applying these principles to his stories, which I'm sure you heard of Macbeth before. I know you heard of Romeo and Juliet, right? Yeah, and then Hamlet. He was favored by Elizabeth I, not Elizabeth II, Elizabeth I, the Queen of England, and a lot of it because of his wit, because of his charming ability and his creative mind. So William Shakespeare, again, you guys know him, I'm sure. English class, I'm sure you'll read a lot of his books, his works, his poetry. Wrote over 150 poems that we know of, that we still have hands on. Yeah, obviously some of that probably got lost throughout the years, but famed for almost 40 playwrights. Okay, so he was an entertainer. He was a producer. He was a director. You name it. He was even an actor in many of his own plays. But he was really famed. Macbeth, what do you have for Macbeth? Why?
And
Yeah, okay, yeah. So with Macbeth and Hamlet especially, it's about seeking the throne. It's about taking really this monarchy, this leadership, this authoritative role, and really what that power, how that power results into some of these bad tendencies for people. Right. So obviously, as you're rising up, let's say in your social hierarchy, chances are there's going to be a lot of issues, a lot of problems that you'll face that you never really thought of before. So I'm sure you can relate it to celebrity status. As you're rising into celebrity status and getting more popular, comes a lot more issues that you really don't think about, you really don't understand. And with Macbeth and Hamlet, that ultimately ends to their demise, right? That obviously leads to their death, to a point where they just see this power and it kind of corrupts them. It takes them down with it. Right, Romeo and Juliet, right? That is a love story, obviously, between two families that really didn't see eye to eye. Does anybody know a little bit about Romeo and Juliet? No? No? The one movie they made, Leonardo DiCaprio was in it. Pretty cool. If you guys get a chance, maybe check out that movie. I don't know if Mr. Fight teaches that or if it's Minnick, I'm not sure. Sorensen now, who knows? But with Romeo and Juliet, it's about a true love story between really the children of these two families that hate one another. And this leads to their death, leads to their demise. And obviously, it pushes the families together, brings them closer together. The hatred between the two obviously ends. All right, is there any questions? So anyway, I wanted to throw those works of art by Shakespeare, because I'm sure you heard of it before. Oh, Julius Caesar's another big one. I just didn't want to confuse you, because I'm sure you would have wrote down the actual Julius Caesar rather than the artwork. But in any case, that is another form of art that's really big that Shakespeare wrote. All right, here's a Sistine Chapel. So here's Michelangelo's famed work in the chapel. As you can see here at the ceiling, he painted a lot of detail, a lot of images of the Bible, revolving around religion. As you can see, this is probably the famous poem, the most famous piece here in Sistine Chapel. Here's Adam, and it looks like he's about ready to touch God's hand up. And there's many other stories detailed of the Bible on the ceiling of Sistine Chapel. Here's Adam and Eve up top here. You can see the forbidden fruit. So yeah, there's a lot of detail you can see with that. I just told you a little bit of the story about the Pope and Michelangelo, how the Pope wanted him to paint this final work of art in the Sistine Chapel to wow people, just to make them shocked at what they're in the presence of religion and Christianity. Because during this time of the Renaissance, now obviously there was a clear divide. Right? there's a separation of that church in people's lives. But it maybe reinforce that this artwork was really established at the forefront in the Sistine Chapel. I told you a little bit about Raphael breaking in, causing a little bit of jealousy that Michelangelo was picked to paint the ceiling. There's a lot of rumors that on the scaffolding he was laying on his back and painting, but in all reality, he's probably standing on the scaffolding, painting, upright. It took him over 4 years to complete. So 4 years, obviously a long time for one piece of work of art. And you can see why the Pope maybe was trying to rush him to get this completed, to get this done. But there's actually a rumor that Michelangelo preferred reading books upright like this after working in the Sistine Chapel. Can you imagine reading a book like that? Preferring to read a book? You don't believe it. But yeah, again, day in, day out for 4 years, if you're reading like that, with your head cocked back and painting with your hand up above your head, chances are you'll probably get used to that.
That's probably what he looked like.
I guess so. All right. Any questions here on Michelangelo? Again, famous for his sculpture of David as well. Raphael. Okay, again, one of the Ninja Turtles, right? So Raphael, we talked a little bit about him with his jealousy, his rivalry with Michelangelo, but in anything, he was also a famed Renaissance artist. A lot of his depictions is based off of Mary and Mother of Jesus and depicting Jesus with Mary. Okay, so a lot of his paintings revolve around that, showing and emphasizing that religion still a very strong primary asset of people's lives during this time of the Renaissance, even though we see that humanism appearing and emerging. School of Athens, okay, another form of work of art detailing about politics, really. They detail a little bit about the political landscape structure of really the lifestyle of people in the Renaissance. But mostly his famed work is painting the Venatus. The Venatus is, like I said, the mother of Christ, Mary, right? And those are his paintings. What's up, Caroline? What's that?
At least the baby didn't put face of the book.
Yeah, how about it? Yeah. So again, you can see how religion really takes emphasis in these people's lives here, especially as Renaissance artists. Okay. All right, so there's Raphael. I'm sure you know who's next yet. Donatello, right? Donatello. So Donatello is a famed sculptrist. Okay, so he's a famed sculptor of the time and detailing about David. Okay, so here's a sculpture of David killing Goliath. I'm sure you guys heard that story back then. Obviously, who knows? But Goliath's head you can see here as David is stepping on Goliath's head. And another essence, this is right outside of the museum within Europe. Okay, this is a sculpture of King David. So he's really transferring that power, that entitlement over. So yeah, here's David as a warrior, as becoming a strong leader in religion here, and then moving into his kingship, moving into his leadership roles, his authority. So again, a lot of these Renaissance artists, they're focused on religion. Okay, even though this was somewhat of a clear divide, a movement in a different direction, religion still reigned supreme, reigned primary. But again, a lot of his famed work was detailing around David. All right, so again, realism, okay, and focusing on this Romanesque form of artwork with sculpture and the practices with sculpting. Chris.
The problem with the sculpture of worship, it just plays when it's supposed to have voices.
You're right.
I'm pretty sure David did that.
You're right. So again, applying some of these principles for what we know as Renaissance Europe, okay, during the time period to obviously the time of, when Christianity was really having its origins. I think that's interesting. Good pointing that out, Chris. All right, Dur. So this is a little bit different look of the Renaissance. So now we're moving more north, okay, and this is where modern day Germany is located. So Dur is known as this Renaissance man, but to German. So what we talked about with Davinci in Italy, with the Renaissance there, okay, this is more depicting a German Renaissance man. So he's called the German Leonardo, Albrechtter. So his studies in Italy, okay, and applying these new forms of realism, of humanism, and these new perspectives of artwork. He's taking that with him up north to Germany and applying these new forms of theories, ideology, and even forms of art to the German culture. So one thing to note about the Renaissance compared to Italy and moving up north into Germany, France, and even England is that their works of art were really detailed about Christianity. They focused heavily on religion. Okay, like I just showed you with the Renaissance artists, with Raphael, Donatello, Michelangelo, yeah, they revolved around Christianity as well, but they're also influenced too a little bit more about ancient Rome and Greece, the really stories, the heralded stories that took hold for many, many years in the Roman Empire, in ancient Greece. So they depicted a lot of these stories, like let's say Hercules, and they depicted a lot of these images and artworks based off of these gods and goddesses of the time period. So they weren't just focused strictly on Christianity, but when you move up more north into Europe, especially into Germany and in France, okay, their depictions is heavily focused, their artwork is heavily focused on religion. So engravings, religious themes, details, again, applying some of the education to it as well. So again, with mathematics, with sciences, and applying it to the art, but really heavily focused on religion. All right, you guys good with that? Okay, so here's some more notable artists of the time. I'll just put these out here for you. But Jan and Hubert Van Ike, okay, everyday life, which I think is interesting. Not many people depicted artwork about just everyday life, what people encountered, what they did within the streets of, let's say, the Renaissance period. But some artists did, like Hubert and Jan Van Ike. So everyday life and detailing how these interactions occur on the streets in England. Peter Bruegel, vibrant colors and the peasant life. So he was fascinated with detailing artwork about how people of the lower class interacted with one another. Okay, what type of job statuses they had, what type of roles and statuses they had within their society. So I think that's interesting, right? Okay, when you move forward, moving into the 1900s, a lot of people depict the lifestyles of the lower class, of what poor people encountered in society. And here it is already happening during the Renaissance period. So as you can see here with this form of art here with Peter Bruegel, detailing about how these people would work in these restaurants and entertainment and constantly doing the jobs that many people would not really like to do. All right, Hans Holbein, German portraits, realistic and symbolic themes. As we're moving into this rule of absolutism and a stronger central government, right, this will depict more of the lifestyle of royalty, of authority, and especially moving into Germany and into France, France more in general. Right, obviously, these forms of art are detailing a little bit more about the royalty, the monarchs. Okay, really how government is becoming a little bit more sophisticated and controlling into people's lives. Yes, Carolyn.
Isn't this the same person who painted half of
I believe so. I mean, I'm not really totally sure, but you can check in on that. Yeah, check in on that. So again, looking at the lifestyles, focusing on royalty, focusing on the lower class, focusing on these people that maybe are in these roles of poverty, which I think is interesting to see and noteworthy to mention. All right, so more northern writers. Okay, so when it comes to humanism, right, how humanism is traveling up north to Germany, okay, and these new viewpoints on society, new viewpoints of education. I think it's important to talk about how this divide has really hit hard, not only in Italy, but moving up north. And when I just talked about the Renaissance period, all artwork was kind of really designed to focus around religion. But at the same time, these studies, these forms of education, these forms of humanism still emerged up north and applying and making somewhat of a clear separation. I think it's interesting to hear with Erasmus, he wanted to make sure that the church could apply the Bible in many different languages. And when we talk about the printing press here soon with Johannes Gutenberg, it's important to note that the Bible is the most printed book ever, year in and year out, week after week. The only time I think it took a second place was, does anybody know? Maybe someone- The only time the Bible came second place in printing and most copies created. Paul. No. Dictionary, no. B? No. Common sense. You guys ever hear of common sense before? No? Okay, all right, yeah. So that was the only time the Bible really ever took second place, which I think is interesting to know. And it just goes to show really how Christianity, religion takes hold, not only during those times, but even today. How the creation of these printing presses and getting novels out to people and the emergence of the Renaissance is not only just applying to the wealthy elite class, but also the lower class. And everything, again, revolved around religion. So I think that's important to note, and how the Bible is being translated in different languages during the Renaissance. All right, then Thomas More, you can almost call him an Enlightenment thinker, right? Looking at this utopia, looking at this ideal society and life, and how social reform needs to really take hold. So I think that's important to note too, that these philosophies, these ideas of enlightenment are emerging during the Renaissance, and how government should be more revolved around the people, that the people should have a say in government, that should control the sovereignty of these areas, not just a centralized government. So yeah, we didn't even get to talk about these absolute governments yet, but already these ideas of how people can have self-government is emerging during the Renaissance. All right, last person I want to talk about. I didn't get through all of them here, but William Shakespeare. We just mentioned him with the vocab, so I don't need to focus on him too much. And you know a little bit about Shakespeare already. So English poet and playwright. We talked about some of his works already with the vocab, with Macbeth, with Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet. Used common language and different types of slang of the time period. So I thought that was interesting to note. So yeah, when you think of Old English, it's really hard to read, hard to interpret. And even in the 1500s, it's way different than the way we talk today, clearly. But in any case, he applied this new emergence of the English language into his playwrights, which many people appreciated. And the reason for is because the middle class, lower class, they weren't able to speak with this sophistication, obviously. So you want to try to apply it to the majority. You want to apply it to many of the people that are experiencing these playwrights. Okay, obviously, you have to have a little bit of wealth to seek this entertainment, but in any case, it really became popular because he was really detailing about the time period, right? The current slang, the current language being talked about during the time. Again, favored by Queen Elizabeth I. I thought that was interesting. So when Queen Elizabeth I, monarch queen of the time, she really, really caught an eye, so to speak, for William Shakespeare. All right, here is the Globe Theater. I think that's interesting to see how people gathered around for these plays, for these playwrights of William Shakespeare's time. And you can just see how many people are jam-packed inside this theater. A lot of it resembling still this Romanesque theme, right? So in ancient Rome, I'm sure you've seen many of these theaters, how they were displayed, how they looked. But with the Globe Theater, it provided protection from the rain. Wow. So that's also nice to see, and how these plays can continue on even with poor weather. Yeah. All right, so there we go. Renaissance artists. I was going to put the assignment out for you, but how about I just wait for tomorrow? No homework then. No homework. Nice. Nice. Cool.